During the fourth missionary journey, the first time Paul asked Luke to write down a book called Book of Acts.
चौथो मिशन यात्राको क्रममा पहिलो कुरा पावलले लुकालाई प्रेरितको पुस्तक लेख्न भने.
Do you remember during the time of the first imprisonment, Paul asked Luke to write the Gospel of Luke.
तपाईहरु सम्झनुहुन्छ होला कि पावलको पहिलो कैदको समयमा पावलले लुकालाई लुकाको सुसमाचार लेख्न भनेका थिए.
So Gospel of Luke, which we studied already, covering the story of the life story of Jesus. From when? From birth of Jesus, BC 4, all the way to ascension of Jesus, AD 30.
यो लुकाको सुसमाचारले येशूको जीवनी ईसापूर्व 4 मा उहाँको जन्मदेखि सन् 30 मा उहाँको स्वर्गारोहणसम्मको घटनालाई समेटेको छ.
When was it written? During the time of the first imprisonment. Okay, 60 to 62.
यो कहिले लेखिएको थियो? पहिलो कैदको समयमा सन् 60 देखि 62 मा.
Paul requested Luke, said, "Look, now let us continue the second book. Let us write the second book that will cover from the ascension of Jesus, okay, all the way to Paul's release. That is from AD 30 all the way to AD 62.
अब पावलले लुकालाई दोस्रो खण्ड लेख्न भने जसले येशूको स्वर्गारोहणदेखि पावलको कैदबाटको छुटकारासम्म अर्थात् सन् 62 सम्मको घटनालाई समेट्नेछ.
That story we call the Book of Acts. The Book of Acts story starting from the ascension of Jesus, okay, and all the way to the release of Paul out of the first missionary, first imprisonment.
यसलाई हामी प्रेरितहरूको पुस्तक भन्दछौं जसले येशूको स्वर्गारोहणदेखि पावलको पहिलो कैदबाटको छुटकारासम्मको घटनालाई समेटेको छ.
Paul asked, look, don't accompany with me in the fourth missionary journey. Okay? You better stay here in Rome and you write the Book of Acts. So Luke stayed in Rome and wrote the Book of Acts in Rome.
पावलले लुकालाई भने कि तिमी मेरो चौथो मिशन यात्रामा मेरो साथ नआऊ, बरु यही रोममा बसेर प्रेरितको पुस्तक लेख. अनि लुका रोममा बसे र यो पुस्तक लेखे.
For that reason, I am assuming that Luke could not write detail on fourth missionary journey because he was not there physically.
सायद त्यसै कारणले होला लुकाले चौथो मिशन यात्राको बारेमा विस्तृत रूपमा लेख्न सकेनन् किनकि उनी त्यहाँ प्रत्यक्ष रूपमा थिएनन्.
Lecture 2, Luke wrote the Acts. So here, AD 63 in Rome.
यो पाठ 2 हुनेछ. लुकाले सन् 63 मा रोममा प्रेरितको पुस्तक लेखेका.
During the 2 years in Rome, Luke wrote the Gospel of Luke. That's the first book. Okay? AD 62. Got it? Now here, that is the life story of Jesus.
रोमको 2 वर्षको बसाइमा लुकाले लुकाको सुसमाचार लेखे जुन उनको पहिलो पुस्तक थियो सन् 60 देखि 62. त्यो चाहिँ येशूको जीवनी थियो.
After the release of Paul, Paul asked Luke to stay in Rome to write the early church history. Early church history. That means that starting, here from AD 30 to AD 60 to 62.
पावलको छुटकारापछि उनले लुकालाई रोममै बसेर सुरुको मण्डली इतिहास लेख्न भने जुन इतिहास चाहिँ सन् 30 देखि 60-62 सम्मको थियो.
So the early church history begins with his ascension and establishment of the first church called Jerusalem Church, and later Antioch Church, and Paul's release. All those, how many years? Around 30 years, at least 30 years, from AD 30 to AD 60 and 62, 32 years. Okay, that story, second book.
यो सुरुको मण्डली इतिहासमा प्रभुको स्वर्गारोहण, पहिलो मण्डली यरुशलेम मण्डलीको स्थापना, एन्टिओखियाको मण्डली अनि पावलको छुटकारासम्म सन् 30 देखि 60-62 सम्म करिब 30 वर्षको इतिहास जुन लुकाको दोस्रो पुस्तक थियो.
The book of Acts has two sections. Okay, first section is Peter's story, and second section is Paul's story.
प्रेरितको पुस्तकमा दुई खण्डहरू छन्. पहिलो खण्ड चाहिँ पत्रुसको बारेमा हो भने दोस्रो खण्ड चाहिँ पावलको बारेमा हो.
So the first 12 chapters in the book of Acts covers Peter's leadership in the Jerusalem church.
प्रेरितको पुस्तकको सुरुको 12 वटा अध्यायहरूले यरुशलेम मण्डलीमा पत्रुसको अगुवापनको विवरण दिन्छ.
Then remaining chapters, chapter 13 all the way to 28, that is the story of Paul's leadership associated with the Antioch church.
अनि 13 अध्यायदेखि 28 अध्यायसम्म चाहिँ एन्टिओखियाको मण्डलीको साथमा पावलको अगुवापनको बारेमा छ.
The two divisions, first 12 chapters dealing with Peter's leadership, associated with what church? Jerusalem church.
यसरी दुई खण्ड सुरुका 12 अध्यायहरू चाहिँ यरुशलेम मण्डलीसँगै पत्रुसको अगुवाईपना,
and second part dealing with Antioch church and whose leadership? Paul's leadership.
अनि दोस्रो खण्डले एन्टिओखियाको मण्डली र पावलको अगुवापनको बारेमा बताउँछ.
So Luke concentrated on two main figures and their ministries. Two main figures are Peter and Paul. Okay? And two churches, Jerusalem church and Antioch church.
यसरी लुकाले दुईजना मुख्य व्यक्तिहरू र उनीहरूको सेवकाईमा केन्द्रित भएर लेखेका छन्. दुई व्यक्तिहरू चाहिँ पत्रुस र पावल हुन् भने दुई सेवकाईहरू चाहिँ यरुशलेम मण्डली र एन्टिओखियाको मण्डली.
First part, under the leadership of Peter in the Jerusalem church, book of Acts start with this information, ascension of Jesus.
पहिलो खण्डमा पत्रुसको अगुवापनको बारेमा चाहिँ प्रभुको स्वर्गारोहणको घटनाबाट सुरु हुन्छ.
Upon that, Peter stood before the Israelites. Most of them came to Jerusalem from overseas. Okay, he delivered a message that is a very famous message, Peter's message. He delivered the message. Upon his deliverance, 3,000 diaspora Jews came to the Lord. That is a very famous story. Okay, it covers Acts chapter 2, 14 through 42.
त्यसपछि यरुशलेममा आएका प्रवासी यहुदीहरूको माझमा पत्रुसले गरेको प्रख्यात प्रचार छ, जहाँ 3000 प्रवासी यहुदीहरू प्रभुमा आएका छन्, जसले 2 अध्यायको 14 देखि 42 सम्म समेट्छ.
Jerusalem church inaugurated after that. Okay, It said, chapter 2, verses 43 to 47 described.
त्यसपछि यरुशलेमको मण्डली स्थापना भयो, जुन कुरा 2:43 देखि 47 ले व्याख्या गर्दछ।
Upon the church started Peter's leadership stories described here in Acts chapter 3 all the way to Acts chapter 6.
यरुशलेम मण्डलीको स्थापनासँगै प्रेरित 3 देखि 6 अध्यायसम्म पत्रुसको अगुवापन बारेमा लेखिएको छ।
Then chapter 7 revealed the stories on Stephen's preaching and his martyrdom.
अध्याय 7 मा स्तिफनसको प्रचार र हत्याको घटना छ।
Saul, later Paul, he took part in that killing Stephen, okay? And Paul actually gave Jerusalem church persecution. Because of that, church scattered, okay, all over. You see, from here, scattered is Samaria, Judea, Samaria, and Galilee, in Syria, even all this Turkey area. Because of who? Saul, Paul. Okay, here that story is here in chapter 8. Verses 1 through 3.
पावल जो साउल थिए, उनी पनि स्तिफनसको हत्यामा संलग्न थिए अनि उनको सतावटको कारण यरुशलेम मण्डलीका विश्वासीहरू यहुदिया, सामरिया, सिरिया र टर्की क्षेत्रतिर छरपष्ट भए, जुन कुरा 8 अध्यायको 1 देखि 3 सम्म उल्लेख छ।
Right after that, Luke wrote Philip's story. Philip, you know, that Philip, one of the 7 deacons, okay, this Philip story covered in chapter 8.
त्यसपछि लुका फिलिपको बारेमा लेख्छन्, जो 7 जना डिकनहरू मध्येका एकजना थिए अनि यसले पुरा 8 अध्याय ओगटेको छ।
Upon that scattering, Philip left Jerusalem church. Okay, then he went to this coastal area. This is the coast here. Okay, coastal area. He carried a message to those coastal people along that. Okay, see, we call him. He is a first missionary person out of the Jerusalem church.
सतावट सुरु भएपछि फिलिप सामरियाको समुद्री छेउका क्षेत्रहरूमा गएर सुसमाचार प्रचार गर्न लागे अनि यी फिलिप चाहिँ यरुशलेमका पहिलो मिशनरी थिए।
He had 4 daughters also, all prophetesses.
4 जना छोरीहरू थिए जो सबै नै अगमवादिनीहरू थिए।
Not only that, Jesus sent here Ethiopian eunuch. Okay, to whom? To Philip. So he got converted. Ethiopian man got converted, became a Christian. Okay, by whom? By Philip.
त्यति मात्र होइन, तर येशूले इथियोपियाली नपुंसकलाई फिलिपको साथमा पठाउनु भयो अनि फिलिपद्वारा ती नपुंसक प्रभुमा आए।
So we consider the Philip was the first a person who shared the gospel with Ethiopian men.
हामी यो अनुमान गर्छौं कि इथियोपियाको मानिसलाई सुसमाचार प्रचार गर्ने पहिलो व्यक्ति नै फिलिप थिए।
But later, Matthew went to Ethiopia. He became the first missionary physically in Ethiopian Christian community. We call the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Okay, the founder of the church.
पछि मत्ती इथियोपियामा मिशनरी भएर गए, जसले इथियोपियाको अर्थोडक्स मण्डलीको स्थापना गरे।
Acts chapter 9 begins with Paul's conversion story. Luke described very much in detail how Paul came to the Lord.
अब अध्याय 9 बाट चाहिँ पावलको परिवर्तनको घटना सुरु हुन्छ अनि पावल कसरी प्रभुमा आए भनी लुका विस्तृत रूपमा लेख्छन्।
Paul was he got the message from high officers in Judaism. He got permission that he should go to Damascus to persecute the Christians, evangelizing people in Damascus. Okay, so Paul was about to arrive in Damascus. Luke wrote that story, okay? And Jesus appeared too. And he became a blind and later accepted Jesus.
पावल मुख्य धर्मगुरुहरूबाट अनुमति पाएर दमस्कसमा भएका इसाईहरूलाई सतावट दिन जाँदै गर्दा दमस्कसको नजिक पुग्दा प्रभु येशूसँग उनको जम्का भेट भयो अनि उनी अन्धो भए र पछि प्रभुमा विश्वास गरे भनी लुका लेख्छन्.
From Damascus, he went all the way down to here Arabia, which is Mount Sinai, okay, Arabia area from Damascus. Spent how many years? 3 years. 3 years he spent in Arabia. Then he came back to Damascus again and then went down to Jerusalem. From Jerusalem, he went to Caesarea and he went back to Tarsus, his hometown. That story we studied already.
अनि दमस्कसबाट सिधै अरबियामा गए जुन सिनै पर्वत भएको क्षेत्र हो र त्यहाँ गएर 3 वर्ष बिताए अनि त्यहाँबाट फेरि दमस्कसमा फर्के अनि यरुशलेममा गए अनि त्यहाँबाट कैसरियातिर गए र त्यहाँबाट आफ्नो गाउँ टार्ससमा गए जुन कुरा त हामीले पहिले पनि सिकिसकेका छौं.
Chapter 10 story is this. Peter realized that many people in Samaria and coastal area people got evangelized by Philip. He realized that. So Peter decided to visit the areas, okay, and teaching them the gospel of Jesus. The first time Peter took off as a missionary.
10 अध्यायमा पत्रुसले फिलिपको सामरियाको अन्य जातिहरूको बीचको सेवकाईको कुरा सुनेर पहिलो पटक यरुशलेमबाट बाहिर गएर प्रचार गरेको घटना छ.
Peter, he was in Joppa. All of a sudden, Jesus showed him a vision. Okay, eat this meat that was prohibited by Jewish people eating because that's all Gentile-related food. And he knew that something was happening in his life.
जसै पत्रुस योप्पामा थिए तब येशूले दर्शनमा यहुदीहरूले मनाई गरेका अशुद्ध खानेकुरा खानु भन्नुभयो अनि उनले अब आफ्नो जीवनमा केही हुँदैछ भनी थाहा गरे.
Jesus told Peter, you go up to Caesarea. You share the gospel with a captain called who? Cornelius. Okay? So Peter went up there and converted Cornelius and his family members.
त्यहाँबाट प्रभुको निर्देशनमा पत्रुस कर्नेलियसको घरमा गएर सुसमाचार प्रचार गरे अनि उनका सारा परिवारले विश्वास गरे.
It's the first official mission experience with Cornelius and family. And Luke wrote down this. Peter was so astonished by the fact that Gentiles became a Christian.
यो पत्रुसको पहिलो अन्य जातिहरूको बीचमा भएको मिसनको अनुभव थियो अनि लुका लेख्छन् कि अन्य जातिहरू प्रभुमा आएका देखेर पत्रुस छक्क परे.
And he came back to Jerusalem. Who is he? Peter. Okay? He reported to Jerusalem church leaders, his fellow disciples of Jesus Christ. Okay? And he shared that message. And all those people, his disciples, Jesus' disciples got surprised by the fact that, wow, by our senior leader, many Gentiles, including the Cornelius and family, came to the Lord.
त्यहाँबाट पत्रुस यरुशलेम गए र आफ्ना सहकर्मी चेलाहरूलाई अन्य जातिहरूको बीचमा भएको मिसनको विवरण सुनाए अनि सबै चेलाहरू पत्रुसद्वारा अन्य जातिहरू पनि प्रभुमा आएको कुरा सुनेर अचम्मित बने।
Okay, this story was written here in chapter 11.
यी सबै घटनाहरू चाहिँ प्रेरित 11 अध्यायमा लेखिएका छन्।
In chapter 12 story, he said that Peter, because of that God's ministry, he was arrested, okay, and put him in jail. But all of a sudden, the angel appeared him and helped him and escaped from the prison.
12 अध्यायमा पत्रुसको सेवकाईको कारण उनी जेलमा हालिएका, तर एकजना स्वर्गदूतले उनलाई सहायता गरेर उनी जेलबाट मुक्त भएका कुरा छन्।
So that is the end of whose story? Peter's story.
यो चाहिँ पत्रुसको बारेको अन्तिम विवरण हो।
Then chapter 13 comes. That's the story of Paul, beginning with his Antioch church story.
अब 13 अध्यायबाट चाहिँ एन्टिओखियाको मण्डलीसँगै पावलको सेवकाईको सुरुवात हुन्छ।
Previously, chapter 11, verses 19 to 30, Luke wrote how the church of Antioch planted.
अघि नै 11 अध्यायमा एन्टिओखियाको मण्डली कसरी स्थापना भयो भनी लुकाले लेखिसकेका छन्।
Who planted the Antioch church? He said that gentlemen who took up the cross of Jesus from Cyrene, okay, who is Simon, okay. This man, when the church was scattered, Jerusalem church was scattered, he and his colleagues went all the way up to Antioch and planted Antioch church there.
यो एन्टिओखियाको मण्डली चाहिँ प्रभुको क्रुस बोक्ने कुरेनीका सिमोनले स्थापना गरेका थिए, जो उनका साथीहरूसँगै यरुशलेमबाट एन्टिओखियामा गए र त्यहाँ मण्डली स्थापना गरे।
The Antioch church members share the gospel, not only Jews but also Gentiles. Okay, so the Gentile, that church was opening to Gentile people.
त्यहाँ लेखिएको छ कि उनीहरूले यहुदीहरूलाई मात्र नभएर अन्य जातिहरूलाई पनि सुसमाचार प्रचार गरे, अनि त्यो मण्डली चाहिँ अन्य जातिहरूको निम्ति खुल्ला गरिएको थियो।
Jerusalem church was focusing on evangelizing Jewish people. Okay, but Antioch church was different. Okay, Jews and Gentiles under the leadership of Simon.
यरुशलेमको मण्डली चाहिँ यहुदीहरूलाई मात्र सुसमाचार प्रचार गर्ने गर्थे, तर एन्टिओखियाको मण्डलीले चाहिँ यहुदी र अन्य जातिहरू दुवैलाई सुसमाचार प्रचार गर्थे, अनि यसको अगुवा चाहिँ सिमोन थिए।
And Jerusalem church heard about that story. So Peter and James, top leaders, dispatched Barnabas to go up to Antioch church and find out how do they serve the Lord.
यो खबर यरुशलेमको मण्डलीमा पुग्यो, अनि पत्रुस र याकुबको निर्देशनमा यरुशलेम मण्डलीले बारनाबासलाई नियुक्त गरी एन्टिओखियाको मण्डली कसरी प्रभुको सेवा गर्दैछ भनी बुझ्न पठाए।
So Barnabas he was sent by the Jerusalem church leaders to Antioch. And Simeon and his colleagues, they were welcomed Barnabas and asking Barnabas, would you be our senior pastor? Okay. So Barnabas accepted that proposal and became a senior pastor of Antioch church.
जसै यरुशलेम मण्डलीले बारनाबासलाई एन्टिओखियाको मण्डलीमा पठाए, तब सिमोन लगायत त्यहाँका अगुवाहरूले बारनाबासलाई उनीहरूको मुख्य पास्टर हुनको निम्ति अनुरोध गरे, अनि बारनाबास एन्टिओखियाको मण्डलीका मुख्य पास्टर बने।
Holy Spirit inspired Barnabas, okay, while he was in Antioch church, asking Barnabas, would you go to Tarsus and invite Saul, okay, to your church? So Saul agreed and went to Antioch church became a assistant.
जसै बारनाबास एन्टिओखियामा थिए तब पवित्र आत्माले उनलाई टार्ससमा गएर साउललाई बोलाएर ल्याउने प्रेरणा दिनुभयो अनि साउल आएर एन्टिओखियाको मण्डलीमा सहायक पास्टरको रूपमा सेवा गर्न लागे।
Acts chapter 13:1 says Barnabas, and for leadership. Barnabas comes the first, then Simeon second leader, and Lucius and Manaen and Saul. How many of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaders. Yeah, 5 leaders in the Antioch church.
प्रेरित 13 को 1 मा एन्टिओखियाको मण्डलीका 5 जना अगुवाहरूको नाम उल्लेख गरिएको छ। बारनाबास, सिमियोन, लुसियास, मानेन र साउल।
At that time, a Jerusalem church in province of Judea got stricken by famine. Okay, so upon hearing that problem, an Antioch church members sent Barnabas and Paul, and brought the gift to famine-stricken church and leaders in Jerusalem.
त्यो समयमा यहुदिया प्रदेशमा खडेरी परेको थियो र अनिकाल परेको हुनाले एन्टिओखियाको मण्डलीले बारनाबास र पावलको साथमा केही सौगात दिएर यरुशलेम मण्डलीमा पठाए।
That was the first time Barnabas introduced, officially, Paul to Jerusalem leaders with the gift.
यो समयमा बारनाबासले सौगातको साथै पहिलो पटक पावललाई यरुशलेमका अगुवाहरूको सामु परिचय गराए।
Paul served as an assistant pastor for 1 year together along with these leaders.
पावलले अरु अगुवाहरूको साथमा 1 वर्ष जति सहायक पास्टरको रूपमा सेवा गरे।
After the completion of 1 year, Holy Spirit challenged these leaders and other elders that you send Barnabas and Saul, as a missionary and send them up to the mission field.
1 वर्षपछि पवित्र आत्माले ती अगुवाहरू र अरु एल्डरहरूलाई साउल र बारनाबासलाई मिसनको निम्ति पठाउने प्रेरणा गर्नुभयो।
So they obeyed the message. So they prayed together and sent Barnabas and Saul to where? To the Roman Empire.
उनीहरू आज्ञाकारी भए अनि प्रार्थना गरेर बारनाबास र साउललाई रोमी साम्राज्यमा पठाए।
First mission, second mission, third mission. We are now here in, after the third mission, Paul went to Jerusalem for Jerusalem mission and Caesarea mission and ship mission. For how many months? 6 months, ship mission. Then arrived in Rome. So they spent 2 years in Rome doing prison missions in Rome. That is the end of here, 62.
उनीहरू आज्ञाकारी भएर पहिलो, दोस्रो अनि तेस्रो मिसन यात्रा गरे अनि तेस्रो मिसन यात्राको अन्तमा यरुशलेमको सेवकाई, कैसरियाको सेवकाई, जहाजको सेवकाई र रोमको कैदको सेवकाई गरे जुन सन् 62 सम्म रह्यो।
This story from the ascension of Jesus all the way, the story on Jerusalem church under the leadership of Peter and the Antioch church under the leadership of Paul, and first mission journey, second missionary journey, third missionary journey, and first imprisonment up until that moment. That's the end of Romans, Acts chapter 28, last verse 31. That story is what we call the book of Acts.
यसरी प्रभुको स्वर्गारोहणदेखि लिएर यरुशलेम मण्डलीमा पत्रुसको सेवकाई अनि एन्टिओखिया मण्डलीमा पावलको सेवकाई अनि पहिलो दोस्रो र तेस्रो मिसन यात्रा अनि पहिलो कैदबाटको छुटकारा चाहिँ प्रेरितको पत्रको सारा विवरण हो।
Okay. Now, during the imprisonment, what book did he write? The Gospel of Luke.
2 वर्षको कैदको अवधिमा उनले कुन पुस्तक लेखेका थिए? लुकाको सुसमाचार।
Upon the completion of the first imprisonment in AD 63, Luke stayed in Rome and he wrote this story.
पहिलो कैदबाट छुटकारा भएपछि सन् 63 मा लुका रोममा बसेर यो सबै विवरण लेखे।
So the first action during the fourth missionary journey of Paul, first action was taken, by Luke, who wrote what? Book of Acts.
यसरी पावलको चौथो मिसनको पहिलो कदम चाहिँ लुकालाई प्रेरितको पुस्तक लेख्न लगाउनु थियो।
The next time I will teach you what was the second action during that time and third action.
अर्को पाठमा पावलको दोस्रो कदम अनि तेस्रो कदम के थियो भनी सिकाउने छु।
So I will continue all the information what had happened during the fourth missionary journey with 8 lectures.
म पावलको चौथो मिसन यात्राको घटनाहरूलाई 8 वटा पाठमा विभाजित गरेर सिकाउने छु।
May God bless you.
परमेश्वरले तपाईहरु सबैलाई आशिष दिनुभएको होस्।